Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into something pretty interesting, I think. It's a connection between personal finance and branding, which, might not seem immediately connected, but the stuff you sent over about Kiyosaki's Cashflow Quadrant and how that can play into strategic branding is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it is interesting how that model, with the focus on those different financial pathways, can be looked at through a branding lens.
Yeah.
And I think they could be really insightful, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because, so often we kind of think about money and branding as like totally separate things, but maybe they're more connected than we think. Before we jump into that, though, can you just kind of remind everybody like what the cash flow quadrant actually is?
Sure. Yeah. So the cash flow quadrant, it's a way of looking at like the four main ways that people generate income. So you have employees, self-employed business owners, and investors. And the key takeaway, I think, from Kiyosaki is that it's not just about how much you earn, but the system that you build to create that income.
So it's not just about the paycheck, it's about how that paycheck comes to you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's more about like the structure of how you're earning that money. So like you could have someone who's, a freelance graphic designer, like they're self-employed, do their own boss, but they're still trading time for money directly, right? If they stop working, the income stops.
So like to move to that business owner quadrant, they would need to create some kind of system that like brings in money, even if they're not the one doing the work.
Yeah, like if they created an agency, hired other designers, and built processes so the business could run without their constant hands-on involvement.
Okay, so that's when branding starts to play a role.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so let's maybe pause here for a sec, because I think, when we talk about branding, I think a lot of people kind of find that a little bit of a fuzzy concept. So what do we really mean when we say branding?
Yeah, you're right. It's one of those words that kind of gets thrown around a lot. But I think in simple terms, branding is about shaping how people perceive you or your product or company. It's that gut feeling someone gets when they see your logo or, when they visit your website or just interact with your business in any way.
So it's not just about like having a cool logo or like a catchy slogan?
No, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's like, think about brands like Nike or Apple. Their branding goes way beyond just like the products that they sell. They've built this whole sense of like aspiration and community and lifestyle, and that's like really powerful.
So how does that kind of thinking apply to someone moving through the cash flow quadrant then?
Well, as you go, from employee to business owner to investor, your branding needs evolve alongside that. If for someone who's like a freelancer, a strong personal brand is like their biggest asset. It helps them attract clients, it helps them build a reputation. But when you become a business owner, it's more about building a brand that represents your company, its values, its mission, the experience that you're giving your customers.
So it's like, if our graphic designer decided to start that agency, how would their approach to branding need to be different now?
Yeah, I mean, they need to go beyond just showcasing their personal portfolio. They need to define like what their agency stands for. What's their niche, what's their style, what's like the promise they're making to their clients. Maybe they specialize in eco-conscious design, or, maybe they're known for having like this bold, playful aesthetic. It's about defining that clear identity, and that becomes their brand.
That helps them attract the right clients and stand out from, all the other graphic design agencies out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then as they grow, that branding needs to be consistent across like every touch point. Their website, their social media, how they write their proposals, even like how their team answers the phone.
Yeah.
It's about building this cohesive experience that reinforces their brand promise.
So then how does that like branding mindset shift again as someone moves into like the investor quadrant? Because, to me, that seems like it's more about, the numbers and less about like image or whatever.
Well, you might be surprised. If, a well-defined brand can be incredibly valuable even for investors. Like think about someone like Warren Buffett. His brand is built on, integrity, long-term vision, and value investing.
Yeah.
And it's not just about how much money he's made. It's the story that he tells, and that attracts the right opportunities and helps him build trust with potential partners.
So even in that financial world, it's not just about the dollars and cents. It's about the story that you tell and the reputation you build.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And having a strong personal brand can open doors that you wouldn't even know existed otherwise. I'll give you a real world example. Like, there's this venture capitalist I follow, Arlen Hamilton. She built this really successful firm called Backstage Capital. And they focus on investing in like underrepresented founders and her brand. It's not just about financial returns. It's about social impact and making the tech world more inclusive.
Right.
And that's a really powerful message, and it's attracted both investors and entrepreneurs who align with her vision.
Yeah, that's a great example. It shows how like a personal brand can actually shape like the types of deals and opportunities that come your way. It's not just about fitting into like the existing system. It's about creating your own space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about defining your own terms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you really highlight something important for the people listening. Like, no matter where you are in the cash flow quadrant, whether you're just starting out in your career or you're building a multi-million-dollar business, like understanding the power of branding can give you a huge advantage.
So what can people do like today to start thinking about their own brand? Like where did they even begin?
I think, a good place to start is just with self-reflection. Like, take some time to think about your values, your strengths, what makes you unique, what are you passionate about, what do you want to be known for?
It's like creating a mission statement for yourself, but like one that's actually, exciting and reflects like who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Like, think about defining like your personal tagline. If you had to describe yourself in like 3 words, what would they be? What problems do you solve better than anyone else?
Okay, so once you have that like clear sense of what your brand stands for, then how do you actually like put it into action?
I think consistency is key. Your brand should be reflected in everything you do, from your online presence to like how you interact with people in person. Like if you're a designer, your portfolio should scream your brand's aesthetic, and your social media should showcase, your design philosophy.
So it's not just about saying the right things, it's about showing it through your work and how you present yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that consistency builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
People know what to expect from you,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes them more likely to choose you over someone else.
Speaking of consistency,
Yeah.
I remember reading in that material you sent about this pizza chain in Israel called Pizza Shemesh, and they managed to expand really quickly even though they were facing local competition in every city they entered. And they said that a big part of their success was due to their branding.
Oh yeah, Pizza Shemesh.
Yeah.
That's a great example of how branding can really lead to business results.
Mm-hmm.
They have this really recognizable brand identity, their logo, their colors, even the font they use. And it immediately tells you this is Pizza Shemesh.
Yeah.
This is tasty, affordable pizza.
So when someone's walking down the street and they see that bright yellow Pizza Shemesh sign, they know exactly what they're going to get. It takes the guesswork out of the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that familiarity can be really powerful, especially when you're trying to enter a new market. People are drawn to things that they recognize and trust.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about personal branding too. If you're consistently putting yourself out there, sharing your expertise and building that strong online presence, then when an opportunity comes up, you're already top of mind for the people who matter.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Building a brand, it takes time and effort, but it's an investment that can really pay off.
So don't wait until you're launching a business or looking for a new job to start thinking about your brand. Start building it now.
Exactly. Yeah, and remember, your brand should evolve as you grow.
Yeah.
What worked for you 5 years ago might not be relevant today. Okay. So be willing to adapt and refine your brand to reflect, who you are and where you're headed.
So welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the cash flow quadrant and the power of branding. I got to say, thinking about my own personal brand through this lens has been pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, I think it's a framework that really speaks to people, kind of connects those dots between, where you want to be financially and how you kind of put yourself out there in the world.
Yeah. And, we've talked about some great examples so far, like, Arlen Hamilton, Warren Buffett, even Pizza Shemesh.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, what are some potential pitfalls when it comes to branding? What are some mistakes that people often make?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
You can't please everyone. And when you try to do that, you just end up diluting your brand and making it less impactful.
So it's better to be laser focused on a specific niche or audience.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. When you try to appeal to everyone, you often end up appealing to no one.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it like a restaurant that tries to serve Italian and Mexican and sushi all on the same menu.
Mm-hmm.
It's just confusing, and they probably don't do any of it that well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that applies to personal branding too. If you're trying to be the expert in everything, you end up being the expert in nothing.
Right. You got to own your, specific area of expertise.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are some other common branding blunders?
Well, another one is neglecting the power of storytelling. People connect with stories, not just like facts and figures.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to like weave a compelling narrative that resonates with your audience and makes them care about what you do.
So it's not just about like listing your skills or accomplishments, it's about telling a story that people can like connect with.
Exactly. Yeah, like
Mm.
think about a brand like Thomas S. Shoes, their whole one-for-one model,
Mm.
where they donate a pair of shoes for every pair purchased.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a marketing tactic. It's a story that really connects with their customers' values.
Right. It's like a bigger idea.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that, how a good story can make your brand about way more than just the product or service you're selling.
And that kind of brings me to another point, which is authenticity.
Yeah.
Your brand needs to be a genuine reflection of like who you are and what you stand for.
Mm.
Don't try to create some kind of persona that doesn't feel true to yourself.
Right, because people can see right through that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially these days with, so much information available online, it's so easy to spot a fake.
Mm-hmm.
People want to connect with real people, not like some carefully constructed image.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great takeaway for our listeners. Be yourself, be consistent, and tell your story in an authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the foundations of a strong brand.
Couldn't agree more.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final question to kind of think about.
Okay.
If you were to design a brand for your own life or career, what would it look like? What story would it tell? What feeling would it evoke in others? Take some time to really explore those questions and let your authentic self shine through.
Yeah, and remember, the Cashflow Quadrant and these principles of branding, they can be really powerful tools to help you achieve your goals, both financially and personally.
Mm-hmm.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building a brand that represents, the best version of yourself.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. We'll see you next time for another, exploration of, knowledge and ideas out there in the world.